We're now going to learn about media commands. Now, media commands are one of Candy Dialog Engine's most useful commands because they allow you to play or display media from dialogues, but importantly, they also allow you to synchronize media very precisely with dialogues. Now, there's three kinds of media commands. First, we have image commands here. We also have audio commands, and we have video commands. And these commands are mostly similar. The only difference is the kind of media that they work with. But otherwise, as you can see, we have, for example, image wait, image pause, and we have audio wait, audio pause, video wait, video pause, and so on. So in this tutorial, we're going to focus mostly on video commands. We're going to use them as an example. And for the volume command, I'm going to use an audio file instead. Now, before you start using the media commands, you need media players in your Dialog UI. So, for example, here I'm going to open the Candy UI scene, and I think I talked about this at the beginning of the video, but here I have this media players node. It's just a regular control node, and it has multiple media nodes as children. So there's a texture rect node, which is called image player for displaying images. There's another texture rect called splash player, also for images. We have a video stream player here for videos. And then we have some audio stream players for playing sounds. And there's 4 of them. Now, if you want to add a new media player, you can just add it anywhere in your Dialog UI. I'm going to make mine a child of the media players node, but that's not required. So I'm just going to duplicate this one, and I'm going to rename it to, I don't know, how about SFX player for sound effects. Okay, so now I've added an audio player, but there's one more thing you need to do. Click on the root node of your UI, and here in the inspector, go to the paths category, and you have this dictionary here, media players locations. And if you expand it, you can see this dictionary has a bunch of keys, and each key has a path. So the way it works is that each key matches a media player. And by the way, I will talk about the effect player later. Okay, don't worry about that. Anyway, so each key matches a media player. For example, we have image, splash, video, sound, ambient, music, speech. And each key is assigned the path to the player that it matches. So, for example, here, the sound key has this path to the audio stream player named sound player, and that's the one here. So what I need to do here is add a key for my new media player. So I would do it like this. You can name your key anything you want. It doesn't have to match the name of your media player. But, you know, just for clarity, I'm going to name mine SFX. And then you need to provide the path. And, well, the path is very simple. In this case, this is the path. And then you just click Add Key Value Pair, and it gets added to the dictionary. So now this will allow Candy Dialog Engine to find the SFX player anytime we just refer to the key. You don't have to worry about the technical side of things when it comes to this. All you need to know is make sure every media player in your scene has a key, and make sure the path to the media player is assigned to the key. Simple. Now, there's one more thing we need to do. Each media player needs a folder where we place files that the media player will play. So, since we added a new media player, we need to add a new folder for it. So, we need to go here in our project folder, and we go to the Candide folder, then to the media folder, and the general folder. And here we have those three folders: audio, images, and videos. So you need to select a folder based on the kind of media player that you just added. If you've added, for example, a texture rectangle, you would go to the images folder. If you added a video stream player to play videos, you would go to the videos folder. And in my case here, I added an audio stream player to play audio files, so I'm gonna go to the audio folder. And in the audio folder, you can see I already have 4 subfolders: ambient, music, sound, and speech. And these 4 folders match the 4 audio players that I already had at the beginning. So what's missing here is a folder for the SFX player. So I need to add a folder for the SFX player, and I'm going to call it SFX in all caps. And the reason I'm calling it that is because in the dictionary here, that's what the key is called: SFX in capital letters. Okay? So make sure your folders have the same name as the key in the dictionary. That's very important. Okay. Now, the SFX folder is empty. That's normal since we just created it. But let's look at an example here. For example, let's look at the ambient folder, and you can see here that there is already a file inside of it called tone. So that means I have this audio file, and the ambient player is able to play it. But other audio players cannot access it because it's inside the ambient folder. So each player has their own files. That's also something you need to keep in mind. And I also have another file here in the sound folder, and this is for this audio player here, sound player. And the file is called bell. And I'm going to use these files later in this tutorial video. For now, I just hope you understand how to add media players, and make sure you add a key for each player in the dictionary here, and make sure you have a folder for each media player. If you don't want the default media players, if you don't need them, you can delete them. And I recommend deleting their keys in the dictionary as well if you do that. It doesn't really hurt if you keep the keys, but it fills up the dictionary, it's causing bloat. It's a bit impractical. You can also name the players anything you want. You can rename the original players. Just make sure you update the paths if you do. So yeah, you have complete freedom to add as many or as little media players as you want, name them whatever you want, place them anywhere you want inside the node hierarchy. Just make sure they are inside the dialog UI scene. And yeah, so that's it for now. That's all you need to know when it comes to adding media players. And now we can look at the media commands. I'm going to use the video commands as an example because all the video commands have an equivalent in audio or images. So using a video as an example will cover every command. Now, the first command we need to use is the video command. This one here, video. And this command has a simple purpose. It plays a video using whichever video player we want to use. If we wanted to play an audio file, we would use the audio command, which is essentially identical. And if we wanted to display an image, we would use the image command. Now, the first data field here, video player, is asking us which video player we want to use in order to play a video. And if you click this button here, you will have a list of your video players. Now, there's something important you need to understand. This does not read from the dictionary here in your dialog UI. It's actually reading from your media folder. Here in my media folder, if I go to my videos folder, I have this folder called video, and that folder is for this video player here in the dictionary. So this is what the Candy Dialog Creator is reading from, those folders. So if I had more folders, it would be displaying them here in this list. So I'm going to select this one because it's the only video player I have and it's the one I want to use. And next I need to select a video file. And again here I can select from a list. Now the list is populated from the video players folder that we specified. If I delete the video player, it cannot show a list anymore because no video player has been selected. So here I'm going to select video again for my player, and here I have my list, and notice that if I go in my video folder, I have this video file. So this is where the list is being populated from the folder or video player that you provide here. Now, if I hover a video file in the list, it plays a preview, and that's very convenient, so you can check quickly that you're selecting the correct file. Next, I need to specify how many times I want the video to play, and that's the loops data field. If I provide 1 as a value, it's going to play the video only once, and then the video will stop. And if I provide 5, it will play 5 times before stopping. And if I want the video to play indefinitely without ever stopping, I can select -1. And I will explain later, there's some commands that I can use to stop a video manually later. Now, I'm going to set the video to play just once, and now we're going to test it. And you're going to see something strange. The video is not playing. So what's happening? Well, it's actually very logical, and this is something you need to be mindful of. My dialog only has the video command. There's nothing after. And the video is not configured to pause the dialog. So what happens is this command runs and the video starts, but dialog immediately continues and there's nothing left to do. There's no more lines or commands. So the dialog ends. And that's why we don't see the video, because the dialog ends immediately after starting the video. So how can we fix this? Well, there's different options. If I had a spoken line here, the video would play while the spoken line is writing and until the player presses a button to advance past the spoken line. And then the dialogue would end. Or what I can do here I can make dialogue pause and wait on the video to play. Now I have two options for that. I have wait time and wait loops. Wait loops is the simplest. I can provide a value like this, 1, and that means dialogue should pause until the video has played at least once. So let's try it now. And here we go. We have our video. It's playing correctly, and when the video ends, the dialogue also ends. Now, another option you have to make dialogue pause while the media is playing is to set a wait time. And you do this here in this field, and you should type the time in this format. That's hours, minutes, seconds, and fractions. Like this. Now, just to show you, if I wanted to make my dialogue pause for 1 minute and 30 seconds, I would write it like this. But I don't actually need to write everything. For example, if I'm only writing minutes and not hours, I can delete the hours here. And if I wanted to make dialogue pause for just 3 seconds, I can just write 3 like this. You also don't have to limit yourself to increments of 60. For example, I can write 90, and that's 90 seconds. I don't need to write 1 minute and 30 seconds. One thing to keep in mind is that dialogue always resumes when the media ends. So, for example, let's imagine I configure my video to play twice, and my video is 7 seconds long, but my wait time is 90 seconds. So this is much more than 2 playthroughs of the video. If I play the video twice, that's 14 seconds. So dialogue will resume after the video has played 2 times. Dialogue will not pause for the full 90 seconds. And this brings us to another detail you need to know. The wait time carries over into subsequent playthroughs of the video. For example, let's say I have 0 wait loops, and I set my time to 10. So what happens here? The video is 7 seconds long, so dialogue is going to pause until the video plays once, which is 7 seconds out of 10. And then, while the video is playing a second time, the dialogue is going to resume 3 seconds into the second playthrough. So we have 14 seconds of video in total here, and the dialogue resumes after 10 seconds. Also, time and loops are cumulative. That means, for example, if I set my wait loops to 1 and my wait time to 3, dialogue will pause while the video plays once. That's my wait loop. It's saying wait until the video has played 1 loop. And then, when the video is playing a second time, dialogue will pause for 3 additional seconds. Let me show you so you can see for yourself. So we have 1 wait loop, which means the video is going to play once, and we have a 3-second wait time, so dialogue will resume 3 seconds into the second playthrough. And there you go. This is what happened. Dialogue resumed in the middle of the second video playback, and well, once again, since there's no more lines after our video command, dialogue ends, which is why the video disappeared. But you probably noticed that the video ended before finishing the second playthrough. And another option you have, instead of writing time, you can write a frame. For example, like this. And this is telling Candy Dialog Engine to make dialog pause until frame 90 is reached. So let's just test it so you can see what it looks like. And notice I changed my wait loop to 0. There you go. It cut off at frame 90 in the middle, which is in the middle of the first playthrough, because the video has a frame rate of 30 frames per second. So the video ended 3 seconds in. Just to make sure it's clear, because I went a bit fast earlier, if you want to specify a frame, you need to write F equal and then the frame number. And just to be clear, you can only specify a frame for video media. It doesn't work with audio because audio media don't have frames, and it also doesn't work for images because images are basically a static image, and Candy Dialog Engine is using a timer to display the image for a certain amount of time. So there's no frames, or perhaps technically there's just one frame. So the frame thing only for video. Now let's try to make a small cutscene with our video. And first I'm going to add a spoken line, and I will assign Anna as the speaker. And well, the girl in the video, she's going to be Anna, and she's going to complain that the weather is hot. Now, I don't want her dialogue to appear immediately when the video starts, so I'm going to set a wait time of 1. And this way, the video is going to start playing, and dialogue will pause for 1 second. And then when dialogue resumes, it's going to display Anna's line. And let's see what that looks like at the moment. Okay, so here we have 2 small problems. First, the video is too small. I want it to be full screen. And second, you probably noticed the video was overlapping the subtitle box. So let's fix both of these things. To fix the video overlapping the subtitles, that's actually very easy. I just need to go here to my video command, and here I have this data field, show hide text. And I have 3 options. I can hide the text, and that means it's going to hide the dialog box or the subtitles or speech bubbles or whatever method I use to display speech. It's going to hide it underneath the video. And to hide it, it's simply going to reset the z-index of the dialog box or the subtitles or whatever. And this assumes that the video player has a higher z-index than the default z-index of the dialog box. So if I want to set it to hide, I just need to set it to -1. If I don't want to modify the z-index of the spoken text, I can select ignore, and that provides a value of 0. And that just means whatever the current z-index of the text, don't change it. But what I really want right now is show, and that's a value of 1. And show is going to change the z-index of the subtitles, and it's going to set the z-index to the same index as the video player plus 1. So if my video player has an index of 120, then the subtitles will be set to 120 plus 1. And this way, the subtitles will be located in front of the video on screen. You also have an option to modify the z-index of the portrait. Now, this is not relevant to me because I'm using the subtitle display mode. I'm not using the dialog box with a portrait. But keep in mind that making the portrait visible above the video or hidden underneath it, it's a separate setting from the text. Now let's just test this quickly and see if my text is displaying above the video. And yes, it is. You can see the subtitles now overlap the video. Perfect. That means there's only one thing left to do, and that's making the video full screen. Now, let's go back to our dialog UI, in this case the Candy UI, and let's select the video player. Now, video players, by default, they adapt their size to match the size of the video. So if my video was bigger, it would display bigger on screen, and if it was smaller, it would display smaller on screen. It depends at what size the video was recorded. So if I want to make my video full screen, I don't think there's an option for that, but there is an option to make the video player expand to become as big as its parent node. And it's right here. If you select the video player and you go to the inspector, you have this property here, expand, and you just need to enable it. But there's still one little problem. The parent node of the video player is this node here, media players, and that's a control node. And from my testing previously, well, this control node is tiny, but I tested it earlier and I made it much bigger, and the video player didn't expand. And I suspect the video player can't expand to the size of a regular control node. So there's a workaround, and here's what I need to do. I just need to add a node, and I'm going to add a panel container. And this will work. I will make my video player a child of the panel container, and I'm going to expand the panel container to be full screen. Now there might be other ways to do this. All of this might not be necessary. I don't really know. And here I just want to make sure that the panel container doesn't have a background, because I don't want this to be displayed on screen. And another thing I'm going to do, you can see here that my video player has a script attached called videoplayer.gd. And I'm going to remove that script from the video player node, and I will assign it to the panel container instead. So I just need to find the script here, and it's right here in the media players folder, in the scripts folder, right there. Perfect. And there's one more thing I need to do here. Now, if I select the panel container and I go to the inspector, we have this exported variable here, video player, and I need to provide the video stream player. Okay, Candy Dialog Engine is going to look inside that script to find the video stream player. So this is what we are doing here. We're telling the script where the video stream player is found. So make sure you remember to do this. And I also need to update the path to my video player now. Now, as far as Candy Dialog Engine is concerned, this panel container here is my video player. This is a video stream player node, but for Candy Dialog Engine, this here is the actual video player. So I need to go back to the Candy UI root node, and here you'll remember in the inspector we have the paths categories, and we have this dictionary that I mentioned earlier, the media player's location. And I just need to update this path here for the video key. like this. So now Candy Dialog Engine knows where to find the video player, and this node, this script, will tell it where to find the actual video stream player node that plays videos. So I hope this is clear. It shouldn't be confusing. It's fairly basic stuff. But again, you know, this relates to making UIs in Godot, and some people find it a little bit difficult to grasp. Now, while we're talking about the exported variables for the video player script, let's talk about the two remaining variables here, default video extension and default Z. What is default video extension for? Well, remember here in our video command, I said I want to play the file drinking.ogv. So here, Candy Dialog Engine can find the file because the extension is provided with the name here. But if I just wrote drinking and I forgot or I didn't bother to write the extension, Candy Dialog Engine has no way to know which file I'm talking about. Do I mean drinking.ogv, drinking.mp4, drinking.something else? So this is where this variable comes in. If the extension is missing from the value here, then it will assume that I want to play a file with this extension. So in this case, it's going to play drinking.ogv because I specified .ogv here. But, you know, I could specify something else like mp4. And in that case, if I write drinking without an extension, Candy Dialog Engine will assume I want to play drinking.mp4, and it will play that file if it exists. And keep in mind, this variable is for this specific video player only. If I have multiple video players, I can give each of them a different default video extension. Also, I don't want to confuse anybody. I used mp4 here as an example, but please be aware, as far as I know, Godot can only play OGV files unless you add plugins. mp4 and other formats will not work out of the box. However, all media players have a variable like this one. For example here, if I select one of the audio players, notice that it has default audio extension. And here it's OGG, but you could replace it with MP3. I think Godot can play MP3 files from my own testing, or you could replace it with another value. Just make sure Godot can play the format you're using. And image players also have default image extension. And here it's PNG, but you could use JPG if you wanted to. That's fine. Again, this is only used when you don't provide the extension in the file name here. And finally, we have this default Z exported variable, and this represents the default Z index the node should have. If you don't know what Z index is, it's found here in most nodes under ordering. And you have this value here, Z index. And it basically tells Godot which node should appear in front of other nodes on screen. So, for example, if a node has a higher Z index, it will appear in front of nodes that have a lower Z index. Now here, the Z index for our video player is 0, and that's fine because the default Z is 120. And when the game starts and this video player is instantiated, the script is going to change its Z index to this value here. So when a node has the default z exported variable, and many nodes in Candy Dialog Engine have it, you need to set the z index you want here in default z, and you don't need to set it here inside ordering. You can set it here as well, it's not gonna hurt, but make sure you set it here as well in default z. And this is important because remember earlier when I explained that I can make my subtitles appear in front of the video? Well, it's modifying the z index to do that. So if my video player has a z index of 120, then it changes the z index of the subtitles node to 121. And if I go to my subtitles node, notice that it has the default z exported variable as well, and it's set to 100. So by default, the subtitles node will appear under the video because the subtitles node has a lower z index. But when I use this to make it appear above the video, it changes the z index of the subtitles to 121. And later, if I hide the subtitles under the video, it changes the subtitle z index back to this value here, whatever it is. In my case, it's 100. Okay, so yeah, I hope this is clear, and let's continue. Now let's just quickly check that we did everything we had to do and we didn't forget anything. Here, I updated the path to the video player. That's fine. The panel container, it's set to occupy the entire screen, and it has the video player script attached. And the video player, the video stream player node has been assigned. Perfect. And here on our video stream player, we set it to expand, so it should occupy the full size of its parent. Okay, so it looks like we're good to go. So let's test it. So our video shows up in full screen and the subtitles appear above the video. This is exactly what we wanted. Now a few things to note. It looks a bit blurry or pixelated. That's because the video was recorded at a smaller resolution and I'm stretching it. Okay, so this is essentially my fault for using a small video and trying to make it fill up the entire screen. Normally you would use videos with a higher resolution if you want them to be stretched across the entire screen. Also, you might notice the proportions are wrong, and that's because, once again, the original aspect ratio for the video is square, and here I'm stretching it into a rectangular resolution. So this is basically me using the wrong video for the job. I would need a video that has the same resolution as my game's resolution. And notice here that the video has stopped and it's not disappearing like it used to do before, and that's because we have a spoken line on screen right now and it's waiting for me to press the Dialog Advance key. So as soon as I press the Dialog Advance key, dialogue is going to advance, and since there's no more lines, dialogue is going to end and the video will disappear. So let me just show you. There we go. Now let's look at more commands, and I'm going to start with video skip. I'm going to place it immediately after my video starts and before Anna speaks. I'm also going to disable any waiting on the video command. So here, video skip, it makes a video skip forward or back by a certain amount of time or to a specific timestamp. The first thing you need to do is select the video player that should be targeted by the command. And then you just need to specify the timestamp you want to skip to. Now, if you want to skip by a relative amount of time, you can write plus, or you can write minus. Let me explain. Here, if I write 3, it's going to skip to the 3-second timestamp of the current loop. It doesn't matter if the video is at the 5-second mark or the 1-second mark, it's going to skip to the 3-second timestamp. On the other hand, if I write plus 3, and for example, if the video is at the 2-second mark when this command runs, it's going to skip by 3 seconds, which means it's going to skip from 2 to 5. 2 plus 3, 5. Or let's imagine my video is at the 6-second mark when the command runs, and I write minus 3. It's going to skip back by 3 seconds. So 6 minus 3 equals 3. Now here I want to skip straight to the 3-second timestamp. So video starts and immediately it skips to the 3-second timestamp, and Anna says something. And we're going to change her text a little bit to match what the video is showing. So let's test it. And there you go. Notice that when the video started, she was already drinking from the glass. And normally, when the video starts, she needs to pick up the glass. Let's watch it again. There you go. Okay. But now I also want to do something more. I want Anna to keep drinking until she's finished talking. And here I can use the video pause command. And this command is going to pause the video until a certain number of lines have been run or processed by the dialog engine. So once again, I need to select which video player I'm targeting. And here I need to write how many lines must be processed before the video can resume. And there's only one line, so I'm going to write 1. And here I can select the line type. Now, what is this? Well, here's the thing. Each time a line is processed after this command, it starts counting down. So let's say I set the number of lines to 5. That means 5 lines need to be processed before the video can resume. And if I select spoken lines, which is 0, only spoken lines will count. So if I have some command lines here, they don't count. And let me just set that to 1 again. Here the video is going to pause, and then this command is going to run, and video will not resume even though a line has been processed, because this is a command line, it's not a spoken line. And I've set my line type to spoken lines only. And then the second command will run, and again the video will remain paused because this is still a command. And finally, Anna is going to speak, and this is a spoken line. So now the video will resume. On the other hand, if I select all lines here, this command runs, and the video immediately resumes afterwards, because when I select all lines, command lines count towards the number of lines to process. Okay, so I'm just going to delete the command lines because I don't need them. And I'm going to set the line type to spoken lines only. And you can see here that I have the option to show or hide the text and the portrait again. This is the same data fields that I had here in my video command. This is just a convenience feature. This way, let's say my dialog box was hidden under the video so far, and once we hit the pause command, I want the dialog box to show up on screen above the video. I can change it here. Anyway, I'm not gonna assign any values here because my text is already configured to show up when the video starts, so I don't want to modify it here again. And let me add one more line here for Anna. Like this. Okay, and now let's test it. Okay, so you can see Anna is drinking, but she's not moving. And that's because of our vpause command. Remember, the vpause command said that the video should pause until one spoken line has been processed. And we have that line on screen right now. Anna is saying this is refreshing. But until I press the dialog advance key, the spoken line is not finished processing. I need to press dialog advance for the video to resume. And I'm going to do this right now, and the video is going to resume, and Anna will say her second line while the video plays. So let's have a look. You can see Anna resumes, her video animation resumes, and her second line displayed on screen. And as soon as the video was finished playing, well, it ended. Now, just to make sure you understand how line type works, let me do a little experiment. I've added this command line here before Anna's speech. And here, I'm going to make the video resume after 2 lines have processed. But notice I keep line type to 0 or spoken lines. So here's what's going to happen. Anna says this is refreshing. And normally, if I press dialog advance, it should advance, but it doesn't. The video is still paused. So what's going on? Well, as I explained, it's counting 2 spoken lines before the video can resume. And here we have a command line, and here we have 1 spoken line and then 2 spoken lines. So with this configuration here, the video would only resume after the second spoken line. But I want the video to resume after this line here. So of course I could set number of lines to 1 and count only the spoken lines. That's what I did earlier. But let's say I want to count all the lines, including commands. Well, here I set number of lines to 2, and here I select all lines. And now it will count these 2 lines, the name command and Anna's first spoken line. So let's test again. Okay, now when I press dialog advance, the video should resume. And it does. Alright, so I hope this explains clearly enough how this all works. Now, what kind of lines should you count? Should you count spoken lines or all lines? What's the recommendation? I don't think there's any particular recommendation here. That's up to you. You might find it more useful to count only the spoken lines. Sometimes you might find it important to count all lines, including commands. And something you need to know, comment lines are not counted. Okay. Let me show you. I'm going to set the number of lines. Actually, I'm going to set the number of lines to 4, and I will count all lines. Comment lines are not counted, and line marks are also not counted. And the logic is line marks and comments don't do anything. They provide information to the engine. They're basically references, but they don't have any effect. They're not true commands in the sense that they do something. They're passive, if that makes sense. So here, I'm going to count 4 lines, and I'm going to count all the lines. And you will see that after this line, the video doesn't resume, because these 2 here are not being counted. Okay, I'm going to press dialog advance, and the video does not resume. Line mark and comment do not count for this purpose here. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, you're going to have issues. Your number here is going to be off if you forget that these 2 are never counted. Another option you have is to pause the video indefinitely. So instead of resuming after a specific number of lines, the video remains paused until you use the video resume command. And if you want to do that, just set the number of lines to -1, like this. And let me show you now. Now the video pauses, and if I advance, the video remains paused. Now if I advance again, dialog ends, so the video disappears. And let's now see the video resume command. I'm going to add it after the first spoken line. And once again, I have to select the video player that I want the command to target. And again, I can modify whether the text and the portrait are visible above the video or hidden underneath it. And I don't want to modify it with this command, so I'm going to keep the values set to 0. And now if I test it, you will see that video pauses, but now if I advance, the video resumes. So this should be fairly simple. And let's now look at the video stop command. I'm going to replace my video resume command with video stop. There we go. So video stop, it just stops the video entirely, and that means the video doesn't freeze, it also gets hidden. All you need to do is specify which video player you want the command to target, as usual. And here's what's going to happen. The video will start, it will skip to the 3-second timestamp, and it will immediately pause. And then Anna is going to speak. This is refreshing. And once I press dialog advance here, the video will stop. And then Anna will say, "So thirsty." So let me show you so you can see it for yourself. Okay, the video started and it's paused. Anna says this is refreshing, and if I press dialog advance, the video stops. And as I mentioned, when the video stops, it gets hidden. And now Anna is saying, "So thirsty." And while we're at it, I'm going to show you the video show command. I'm going to replace video stop with it. So I'm deleting video stop, and now I have video show. And well, this one is very simple. As usual, you select the video player you want to target, and the video show command, it just displays or hides the text and the portrait above or under the video. So this command, it's doing this here. Okay, so this is in case you want to modify whether the text and portrait are visible or hidden after the video has started. And well, as an example, I'm going to hide the text here. So Anna is going to say this is refreshing, and once I press Dialog Advance, her text is going to be hidden under the video. So this line here will be under the video, and since the video is not full screen, you will see that the video overlaps the text. Okay, this is refreshing. Right now it's on top of the video. This is normal. And if I advance, as you can see, the video show command ran and positioned the text under the video. And the video is still frozen because, I mean, not frozen, but paused because we don't have a resume command. So this is normal, it's not a bug or anything. And finally, I'm going to show you the video wait command. So let me just delete the video show, and I'm going to delete video pause. And after the skip, I'm going to add video wait. And I'm going to wait until the 5-second timestamp. So here's what's going to happen. The video will start, and it will immediately skip to the 3-second timestamp. And Dialog is going to pause until the 5-second timestamp. So the video is going to play for 2 seconds before Dialog resumes. That's what video wait does. It pauses the dialogue. Don't confuse it with the pause. Video pause, it pauses the video, and video wait, it makes the dialogue wait. Okay. Remember to select a video player you want to target. And there we go. Let's test it. So there we go. The video starts, and then it immediately skips to the 3-second timestamp. This is what the vskip command does. And then immediately also, the vwait command pauses the dialog processing until the 5-second timestamp. Now keep in mind, this is an absolute timestamp. So if you write 5, it means pause until the 5-second timestamp. It doesn't mean pause for 5 seconds. Now, this command, it's otherwise identical to the options you have here in the video command. Remember, in the video command you have wait time and wait loops. And in here you have your wait time and your wait loops. So you could also make the video play a certain amount of loops before dialog resumes. Here the video would play for one entire loop, and then it would also play until the 5-second timestamp in the second loop. But again, remember also that dialog will resume as soon as the video ends, and here the video is configured to play one loop only. So here with those settings, the dialog would resume as soon as the first loop is finished, because that's when the video ends. Dialog would not be paused for one loop plus 5 more seconds. Again, vwait, it's identical to the settings you have here in the video command. Now, the last command I need to explain is the volume command, and for this I'm going to use an audio media. So first here I'm going to use my audio command to play a media. And my media is an ambient sound, which is assigned to this audio player here, ambient. So I'm going to select ambient as my audio player, and here I'm going to select this. Now you may notice when I hover the file in the list, you can hear a preview. It's not a very interesting sound, but it will do for the purpose of demonstration. Now I'm just going to add a spoken line because I don't want the volume to change instantly at the start, otherwise you will not notice that the volume is changing. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to increase the volume because it's not very high. If I lower it, you will not hear it at all. Now, after the spoken line, I will add the volume command. And I'm also going to add one more spoken line just to make sure dialogue does not end immediately after the volume command. Otherwise, the audio is going to stop. Now, for the volume command, I need to select a media player to target. So this is the case with every media command, pretty much. And here, I need to provide a volume value. Now, I think the default value is 0, so let me just do this. And I hope it won't be too loud. Okay, you can hear the volume. Okay, you can hear the sound. And now I'm gonna press the dialogue advance key and volume should increase. It's now louder. So here I set the volume value to 10. Now this is an absolute value. It doesn't increase volume by 10, it sets the volume to 10. So let's imagine this. I'm going to add another volume command here at the start, and I will set volume to 5. And here I'm going to increase volume by 5, and I'm going to do this by adding the plus sign in front of the value. So volume starts at 0, and here it gets set to 5. So you won't notice an increase at all because it's going to be immediately at the start. And then when I press dialogue advance, it will increase volume by 5. And that will bring us to a volume of 10 in total. So you will notice an increase here. Okay, now I'm going to press dialogue advance and volume will increase a little bit. There we go. Or another option, I could reduce volume by a relative value. And I just need to use the minus sign. So let's test it. You can hear it, and now if I press dialogue advance, volume will get lower. Now it's considerably lower. It was reduced by 5. Okay, so that should be straightforward. Now let me delete the first volume command. I want volume to start at 0. And I want to increase volume to 10. However, this time, I don't want volume to change instantly. I want volume to progressively increase over a period of 3 seconds. So make sure you listen closely. Once I press Dialog Advance, volume will start to slowly increase over a period of 3 seconds until it reaches a value of 10. So listen closely. You can hear it increase if you pay attention. Okay, so yeah, this is another option you have. Instead of increasing or reducing volume instantly, you can change volume progressively over any period of time you want. Just write the time value here, and that's it. And one more thing I want to mention is the image command for displaying images. The reason I want to mention it is because it has a few different options than the video and audio commands. The main difference is this data field here, duration. The image command displays a single image, so for this reason, you need to specify how long you want the image to display. So as an example, you could write 30, and that would make the image display for 30 seconds. And just like video and audio, you can also specify how many times you want the image to display. Now, this might not be very important for images because you can set any duration you like, but the option is here. So if I set loops to 2, it's going to display the image for 60 seconds. And then here you have your wait time and your wait loops. You have your show, hide, text, and portrait options, and all of that. And of course, up here, just like with the video and audio commands, you need to specify a media player that you want to use for displaying an image, and then you need to select an image file. Now, I also want to mention that there's an option to display animated images. But I'm not going to talk about this in this video because this is considered more of an advanced feature. And in addition, it's also considered sort of an experimental feature at this point because it works, but we're not very happy about the performance, and we want to look into methods of improving that performance. So right now, we don't want to encourage people to use the animated image option. And again, if you want to use it, you can, but it's also considered an advanced feature, so this is not the topic of this video. And just in case you're wondering, we are also considering other options for displaying animated images. We want to look into what options might be built into Godot that we could use. And we're open to user feedback if you have any suggestions or ideas that you want to share with us. Now, let's look at the effects command. I already explained the clear command earlier, which clears and hides dialog UI elements, so I'm not going to talk about it again. Let's talk about the hide command, because now that we've seen media commands, this one is relevant. Remember when I talked about media command, I showed you how the various media commands allow you to show or hide the text or the portrait, and that's basically what the hide command does, except it only lets you hide. It doesn't let you show text or portraits above media. So here you have two options: ignore, and that means don't touch this. Don't modify the text or the portrait. Or you have the option hide, and that means reset the z-index of the text or the portrait. And by resetting the z-index, it would be hidden under any media because we assume your text and portrait nodes have a lower default z-index. Now, one thing you need to be careful about here is that hide has a value of 1 and not -1. And that's because the command cannot show the text or portrait above media. It can only hide it. So 1 means that you want to hide the text or the portrait, and 0 means you don't want to change it. That's it. Very simple. And now let's look at the wait command. To explain the wait command, first I'm going to have Alice say something here like this. And then I'm going to add a wait command. And the wait command allows me to pause the dialogue for a set amount of time. So I'm going to wait 3 seconds. And after waiting, I'm going to have Alice say, "Oh, never mind." And just to make sure that you can see when I press dialog advance, I'm going to add a clear command here. So Alice is going to speak. She's going to say, "Wait a moment." I'm going to press dialog advance. Her speech is going to disappear, and dialog is going to pause for 3 seconds. And then Alice is going to say, "Oh, never mind." So this should be straightforward. Let's test it. Okay, Alice says, "Wait a moment," and I'm going to press dialog advance, and now it's pausing for 3 seconds, and now Alice speaks again, "Oh, never mind." Okay, so yeah, that's the wait command. It's nothing complicated, and you can write the time in the hour, minute, second format that I showed you previously during when I was explaining the media commands. So this would be 3 seconds. If I wanted to pause for 1 minute and 30 seconds, I could write 90 seconds, or I could write 1:30 like this, and so on. Next, let's look at the effect command. Now, the effect command plays an animation. And here you need to provide the key to an animation player. So you need to look it up in your Dialog UI in the media player's locations dictionary. And I have this effect player here, this animation player, and it's referenced with the key called effect. So this is what I would write here. Now, unfortunately, Candy Dialog Creator has no way to find your animation players because it doesn't know which scenes in your game are Dialog UI scenes. In the future, we're going to let you create a list of effect players inside Candy Dialog Creator, so this way you just need to populate the list manually once and you will be able to select any animation player from a drop-down menu. But at this time, unfortunately, you need to type the key of each player by hand. Now, you shouldn't have too many effect players, and you can give them the same key across multiple Dialog UIs. You can give them all this key, assuming you have only one animation player per Dialog UI. So it shouldn't be too hard to remember what key you're using. And then you need to provide an animation. And again, there's no option at this time to select an animation. Maybe in the future we will be able to figure out a way to do this. So right now, what I need to do here is go to my effect player and find the animation I want to play. And this is it, Fade Black 1. And this animation fades to black over 1 second. So I'm just going to type it here. Again, hopefully we can provide a way to have a drop-down list in the future. Next, I'm going to add another effect command here. And I'm going to use this animation. unfade black 1. Let me just make sure. Yes, it's correct. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Alice is going to say, wait a moment, and the screen will fade to black. And after 3 seconds, it will unfade, and Alice will say, oh, never mind. And of course, I need to make sure my wait command is configured correctly. Okay, let's test it. So, wait a moment. I'm gonna press dialog advance. It fades to black. It waits 3 seconds, and it unfades, and Alice says, oh, never mind. So, yeah, there you go. Now, one thing to be mindful of, you may have noticed that when Alice said, oh, never mind, we did not see the typewriter effect. And that's because it began writing when the unfade animation started. So that's just a little thing you need to be aware of here. It's gonna start the animation and immediately move on to the next line while the animation plays. So if you want the animation to finish before it continues, you need to add a wait command, and you need to configure it to be as long as the animation. So my animation is 1 second long, so I'm adding a wait command configured to 1 second. And now if I play the scene again, we will see the typewriter effect after it unfades. Unfade, and now Alice speaks after the animation is finished. Alright, so, it's not difficult. Yeah, it's a few small details like this you need to be mindful of, but you will quickly notice when you test your dialogues if something is wrong, if you forgot a wait command somewhere, if something is a little bit out of sync. And, it shouldn't take too much experience to learn to make perfect cutscenes. With that said, there's another option if I want to make dialogue pause while an effect is playing. The small problem here with the wait command is I need to know how long the effect is. Now I can just look it up in my animation player, but it's a bit inconvenient to do that. So instead, what I can do, I'm just going to delete the wait command, and I will add the effect wait command instead. And here, I just need to provide the animation player or effect player that I'm targeting. And here I have wait time and wait loops, just like I had for media commands. So if you've watched the earlier part of this video on media commands, you should know how wait time and wait loops work. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to set my wait loop to 1. My effect is playing just once, and I want to wait until it's finished playing. So here we go. And let's test it. Okay, fade, wait, unfade, and notice that Alice spoke again when the animation finished, not while it was playing. Now, I just used the effect wait command to show you how it works, but in this case, I didn't actually need it. See, the effect command also comes with an option to wait until the animation is finished playing, or wait a certain amount of time. So you can see it here. The effect command has wait time and wait loops as data fields. So I could just set wait loops to 1 in the effect command directly. The effect wait command here would be in case you want to make dialogue pause later, if you have some commands perhaps after the effect command that you want to run. So let me just show you again that the effect command is able to pause the dialogue. Fade, wait, unfade, and dialogue resumes. And finally, we have the effect stop command, and this can be used to stop an animation. I could use it to stop an animation midway through. For example, if I wanted to stop unfade black while it's in the middle of playing, I could do this, set the wait time on unfade black to 0.5 because the length of that animation is 1 second. And then I could add effect stop. But that's not the only way you can use effect stop. So instead what I could do is this. Let's say I don't want to unfade, I just want the black to disappear instantly. I could remove the unfade animation entirely and use effect stop to put an end to the fade animation. So let me show you. It's gonna fade, wait 3 seconds, and then the animation instantly stops, the black disappears, we can see our screen, our game environment again. So yeah, that covers the effect commands. Notice that unlike media commands, which have video pause or audio pause, effects do not have a pause command. Remember, the pause commands, they make the media pause, not the dialogue. And there's no command to pause an effect midway through. Now, we could add it if our users give us feedback that they need a command to pause effects. Sure, we will work on it. It's just that at this time we figured it's probably not necessary. If you're playing an effect, which is an animation, you probably want to play it completely. And you definitely don't want to pause it. Maybe you want to interrupt it before it's finished, but it didn't seem likely that anyone would want to pause these effect animations. But again, if you feel that you need an effect pause command, let us know and we will be happy to work on it. Now, I've shown you how to use the effect commands to play animation effects, but what about the UI side of things? Well, you need an animation player in your dialogue UI, and the animation player is very similar to a media player, so just add an animation player and make sure you attach this script here, effectplayer.gd, which is provided with Candy Dialog Engine. You can find it in the scripts folder. Okay, so yeah, have an animation player attach the script, and then you go to the root node of your dialog UI, and here in the inspector, inside paths, you have this dictionary here that I explained when I was talking about the media commands, media players locations. And you need to add a key for your animation player. In my case, this is the key, effect. And you need to assign the path of your animation player as the value for that key. Okay, so here, this is the path to my animation player. Again, I spoke about this dictionary when I was explaining media commands. So if you haven't watched the part of this video on media commands and you have questions about this dictionary, watch that and it should explain what you need to know. But this is essentially it. Add an animation player, attach the script, add a key for your animation player in this dictionary, and assign the path of your animation player as the value for the key. That's all. But now, what about the animations themselves? How do they work? Well, I used this node here, Screen Effects, which is a color rectangle. Now, this node is entirely optional. It comes provided by default with the Candy UI, but you don't need it. If you want to delete it, you can delete it, that's fine. Just be aware that these animations will break if you remove the node, so make sure you delete the animations. Now this is just a color rectangle. It's great for the effects I showed you where I want the entire screen to go black, but you can configure any animation you want in your animation players. You can create animations that will have effects on other nodes, and these animations could have effects on the nodes in your UI scene or in other parts of your game. Whatever animations you're able to create in your animation player will work. Candy Dialog Engine does not care. Just create the animations however you like, and then tell the commands which animations to play. That's all. So yeah, that's how I did those fading animations. I just used a simple color rectangle, but any animations will work using any nodes you want. And we're now going to learn about CS commands. CS commands stand for cutscene commands. And these commands have a very specific purpose. They can modify any node in your game. Now, they're mostly intended for 2D or 3D nodes, but they can work on really any node you want. To give you a few examples up front, we have the scene command, which can instantiate any scene you want, the visible command to toggle visibility on a node, or the camera and light command, which can modify properties on cameras and lights. Now, these commands will require that you provide a path to your nodes. And this is done here in your dialog scene. So, for example, if I click my Candy UI root node and I go to the inspector here to the paths category, I have this dictionary, CS locations. And if I expand it, it's full of keys with node paths assigned. And essentially, each key here represents a node that has multiple other nodes as children. And these children nodes are the ones that the cutscene commands will target. You can add any keys you want, and you can of course provide any path you want. Typically, make sure you provide the path from the root, but this will allow the cutscene commands to reach any node at all in your game. We're going to start with the scene command, and well, to do this, let's look at our 3D scene here. And let's see where we have our NPCs. Right here. Game NPC. So let's make sure the path is correct in our Candy UI. And as it turns out, that path is not assigned anywhere in our CS locations dictionary. So let's do this. We're going to add a key called NPC, and we're going to provide a path for that key right here. There we go. And you'll see in a moment that we're going to target the actor nodes that are children of this NPC node. So here we're back in the Candy Dialog Creator, and we have our CS scene command, and the first data field is asking for one of the paths in the CS locations dictionary. So just to be clear, we need to provide one of those keys here, and we want to provide this key, NPC. So let's do just that. And then we need to provide some target nodes. As I mentioned earlier, the CS scene command will instantiate a scene. And what we're doing here is telling the command who the parent of the instance will be. And you can actually provide multiple parents. For example, I can do this. Let me just check that the names are correct. Alice, construction worker, yes, that's fine. And now I need to provide a scene. Now, I have a ready-made scene just for this purpose, and it's this one. Let me just show you. It's this scene here that I created previously. It's just a simple rectangular mesh, and it's going to appear above the characters. Now, I have two targets, and that means I need two scenes. So I need to provide the same scene twice. And the first scene will be assigned to Alice, and the second will be assigned to construction worker. So let's test it right now, and you will see that it works. There we go. Our two characters each have a floating gray rectangle above their heads. Now, these rectangle signs are simply called Node 3D. That's their default name. So what happens is, I'm just going to show you here, when I use the scene command to add a rectangle to Alice, that's the name that this rectangle has by default, Node 3D. However, the scene command allows me to rename the instance when it's created. And to do this, you can use the instance name data field. And all you need to do is type a name like this, Alice sign. And that means the first instance here will be named like this. And if I have only one name, the second instance here will not be renamed. So Alice's sign will be renamed Alice sign, but construction worker sign won't be renamed, so it's going to keep its default name of Node 3D. However, if I want to rename the construction worker's instance, I can do this. And this instance would be named like this. Another option I have, let's imagine that I have actually 3 scenes like this. And let's imagine that for the construction worker, I don't want to rename their scene, but I do want to rename the player's scene. Well, in that case, you would simply write a space followed by a comma, and then this. And here's what happens. Alice's sign will be named like this, and the construction worker sign will not be renamed because it's just an empty space before the comma. And then the player's sign will be named like this. So yeah, if you want to skip renaming for one of the instances, just write an empty space followed by a comma. Now let's look at the csVisible command, and here this is very simple. What it does, it toggles visibility. So you have multiple options. You can make some nodes visible, or you can make them invisible, or you can toggle their visibility. And if you select toggle, if the node is visible when the command runs, it becomes invisible. And on the contrary, if the node is invisible when the command runs, the node becomes visible. So this should be straightforward. Let's just test it quickly on Alice. We're gonna make her invisible when dialog starts. Alice is the pink character, and you can see now we only have the yellow character, construction worker. Alice is invisible. Okay, so this command here, csVisible, should be very simple to understand. And next we have the toggle command. Now the toggle command, it just changes any property you want on any node. However, you need to be aware that it will require that you write a little bit of custom code inside the script attached to the node. First, let's assign a path and let's select a node, Alice, again. And now here's where you might have to write some custom code. You see, these data fields here, method, properties, and value, they don't do anything inside the command. What actually happens, CS toggle is going to call this function here, candy toggle, on the target node. And here the target node is Alice. Specifically, it's the node that represents Alice in the 3D space. So the command is going to call this function, and it's going to pass these three arguments: toggle method, toggle properties, and toggle value. And these arguments are whatever you write here in those data fields. Now, this function is not provided with Candy Dialog Engine by default, because the idea is that you need to write the logic you actually want to use. So you will need to write your own code here. Now, for the purpose of this video, I have written this code here, and feel free to use it in your game if you want to. And let me explain what it's going to do. First, I'm going to provide a method, and then I'm going to provide a property and a value. And what I want to do here is make Alice's node invisible. Now, let's look at the code. First, toggle properties in my code could be a string of multiple properties separated by a comma, like this. Okay, now this is something my code here allows, and depending on your own code, it may or may not support multiple properties. That's up to you. But my code supports multiple properties. So the first thing my code does here is to extract all the properties from the toggle properties string, and it appends each property to this array here. So for example, it would do this, and so on. Okay? So this way we have all the properties neatly separated. That's what my code does right here. And if I wanted to support multiple values, currently my code doesn't support multiple values, but if I wanted to do that, I could basically copy this logic and adapt it for toggle value. Now, the next thing my code does is match the toggle method right here. So remember, the method I provided is bool, and here if I provide bool, it converts the value into a boolean. So if the value is true, it converts it to the boolean true, and if the value is false, it converts it to the boolean false. And you can see here I provided false as a value. And finally here, my code iterates over each property inside the properties array, and for each property it assigns the value to it. So in my case here, I have only one property, visible, and my code is going to assign the value false to the visible property. And this will make Alice invisible. So let's see it happen on screen. And there we go. Alice is not there. She's invisible. The command worked. Next, we have the CS camera command. And this one is very straightforward. It simply changes the active camera. Now, we need to provide a path to the parent of the camera. So let's go back to our project, and this here is the path to our cameras, game and cameras. So let's just make sure that the path is correct in our dialog UI. It is. Okay, so, and the path name is cameras. So let's copy it, and now we are going to provide the path here, cameras. And now we need to specify which camera we want to make active. Now, by default, camera 1 is the active camera. And to show you that the command works, I'm going to make camera 2 active. And pay attention here. This is what camera 1 would show. And if the command works, this is what we will see. Notice that camera 2 is slightly behind Alice. So let's just write camera 2 as the target node, and let's test it. And it worked. We are looking at the scene from camera 2's perspective. Now, in the future, we might add more options to the CS camera command. We just wanted to keep it simple for now, and until we get more feedback from our users on the properties they want to change. Keep in mind, you can use other commands to modify properties on cameras. You could use the toggle command or even the set command here. But yeah, it would probably be useful if the CS camera command had a few more options, and once our users tell us which are the most important options they might need inside this command, we will consider adding them. And next we have the CS light command. Now the CS light command modifies lights, whether they are 2D or 3D lights. Doesn't matter, it works on all the light nodes. And it can do two things with lights. It can modify the light energy and the light color. So let's provide a path to our lights. And this is our path. Let's make sure that it's correct. Yes, it is. So we're going to copy the key, paste it here, and let's check the name of our light node, light 1. And notice the energy is set to 1. We're going to increase it a little bit. Let's go back here. Let's provide the name. Now here, I'm going to set the energy to 2. And to make sure you can see the light changing, I'm going to add a wait command before the CS light command. And I'm just going to set the wait command to 3 seconds. And one more thing you can do here is select an operator. If you select the equal operator, it sets the light's energy to this value. So in this case, it would change the energy from 1 to 2. If you select plus, it adds the value. So in my case, it would do 1 plus 2, and it would set the energy to 3. You can also subtract the value from the energy, or multiply by this value, or even divide. But I'm just going to use the equal sign and set the energy to this exact value. So let's have a look. It's going to count 3 seconds and the light will increase. There we go. The energy was increased. You should have been able to see it. And now let's look at the other option that the command provides, and that's changing the light color. Now, here you need to type a color code, and luckily you don't have to figure out the correct code to use because, as I mentioned previously in this video, here in the Inserts panel on the right, you have the option to insert a color. If you click here, you can pick a color that you like, and then you can copy the color code in different formats. And as a reminder, you have two options. If this was the last field you selected, you can just click the arrow to insert the color in the field. Otherwise, you can click the C button to copy the color to your clipboard, and you can then manually paste it. Okay, let's test this. And we're gonna have a 3-second wait at the beginning once again. And there we go. You can see the light color changed to blue. Now, let's look at the CS location command. And this command has a specific purpose. First, it moves one node to the same position as another, and optionally, it also rotates the first node to match the rotation of the second node. Now, the CS location command can work with any nodes at all, but for example, if you're making a cutscene and you want to move some nodes, such as characters, to specific places, you might want to use dedicated marker nodes. And I'm going to do just that here. I'm going to add this node 3D, and I will call it markers. And here, you can add a marker 3D, or 2D if you're doing a 2D scene. Now, a marker 3D, if you're not familiar with this type of node, it doesn't do anything on its own. It's essentially a reference in 3D space, and that's exactly what we need. I'm going to give my marker 3D a mesh, because if you look at it, it doesn't have a mesh, it just has this, can't see it very well, but it just has this shape here. So let me just give it a mesh so we can see it, and I already made one. It's this scene here, arrow 3D. And you can see this represents an arrow. So now we can see our marker better, and on top of that we can see which direction it's facing. Now, what I want to do here, I want to move the player to the marker, and I want to rotate the player. So this way the player will look like they're taking part in this conversation. So I'm going to place the marker here, and I'm going to give it the same rotation that I want the player to have. And here I have my player node, and of course I want to make sure my paths in the CS locations dictionary are up to date. So we have the player key, and we have the markers key, and we're going to use both of them. So here, back inside our command, we're going to provide the player as path 1 and as target node. Now here, player, it refers to this key here, and the path is this node. It's not the actual player node, it's the parent where the player is located. And here, player as the target, it refers to the actual player node. And the player is in the scene, it's here in the back, off camera, so it's not visible until the location command moves it here. Next, we need to provide the path to the marker we want to use, like this. Let me just rename this. marker 1, and here marker 1. Great. So that's all there is to it. Our player node is going to move where the marker node is located, and now I need to set up the rotation. It's enabled by default, and if I wanted to disable it, I would just select false or set the value here to 0. But I want the player to rotate and match the marker, so I will leave it set to 1. So that's it. The player is going to move to the marker and it will rotate to match. Now, there's just one more thing I forgot to do, and that's to set my marker at the correct height, because the player's center is above the ground. So I need to make sure my marker is at the correct height. Otherwise, the player would move halfway through the floor. Okay, and now if we test it, there we go. Notice the player has been moved exactly where the marker was, and the player is also facing the same direction. Now, small detail, you should hide the marker mesh like this, or you can hide it at runtime through code if you want to. The mesh is just here to help you position the marker if you use a mesh, so don't forget to hide it so that it doesn't show up inside the game. And one more thing I want to mention here is you can have multiple targets and multiple markers if you want to move multiple nodes at once. There's just one condition. You need to have a marker for each target, and all targets must have the same path, and all markers need to have the same path as well. You cannot provide multiple paths. And as usual, if you want to provide multiple targets or multiple markers, you just separate them with a comma, like this. And now let's learn about the cslook command. Now this command is really interesting because it allows you to make one or more nodes look at another node. So let me just adapt my 3D scene a little bit. First, I'm going to move the player to the NPC node, and this way I'm going to have my 3 nodes here in the same place. I'm also going to rename this one Jane so that it's shorter, and I'm going to move the player over there with the others, like this. Alright, and let me just rotate Jane so she doesn't overlap the player, and they're now looking in the same direction. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to place my marker right here. Okay, so I have my 3 characters, and well, I want them to look at the marker. So this is what I'm going to do. First, provide the path, and then provide the nodes I want to target, and then here provide the path for the markers, marker 1. And this is the trickier part if you're not careful how you design your nodes. You need to select which axis on the target nodes is going to be facing the markers. And in my case, it's the -x axis. Typically, it should be the -z, at least that's the recommended default in Godot. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, in my case, I wasn't very careful when I designed my character nodes, so I need to select the -x axis. And now, if we test the scene, notice that all 3 characters are facing the marker. Now, you don't have to use this command to make characters look at a node. Um, you can make characters align with a node. Here, I'm going to place the marker on the right of the characters, and I want all the characters to look forward. Okay, so they should be facing in the same direction as the marker is pointing, right? I want all characters to face to the bottom of the screen. And to do that, I'm gonna have to change my axis here to +Z. So let's test it. And there you go. All three characters are looking in the same direction. You could use this for a crowd standing at attention, or, whatever. So yeah, just to show you what's possible with this command. Also, note that you can provide a different marker for each node here. So if I had multiple markers, I could do this. And Alice would be using marker 1 as a reference. Player would be using marker 2, and Jane would be using marker 3. Now, if you do this, if you use multiple markers, you absolutely need one marker for each target. If I did this, 2 markers and 3 targets, Jane wouldn't have a marker, and so she would not look at anything. The command would ignore Jane. Let me show you quickly so you can visualize it. There you go. Alice in pink has rotated according to marker 1, and the player in blue has also rotated according to marker 2 on the right of the screen. But Jane in yellow did not rotate because she doesn't have a marker. So once you have more than one marker, make sure you have one marker for each target. However, if you have a single marker like this, all the targets will use it. That's what we did earlier, but let me just show you again. There, all 3 of them are using marker 1. So, I hope that's clear, and yeah, that's the cslook command. Next, we have the csmove command, and well, this one, I'm not going to talk very much about it, actually, because it requires writing custom code. Now, the csmove command, technically it could do anything you want, but we added it for the purpose of making nodes move. Remember, when I showed you the location command earlier, it makes nodes jump to a location. They don't move smoothly to their destination, they just teleport. And the csmove command is supposed to make nodes actually move. So you would use it to make a character walk, or a vehicle drive, or, whatever. But as I mentioned, you need to write custom code for it. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's many ways to make nodes move. You might use different kinds of pathfinding algorithms. You might use different moving methods. You might want to play an animation. You might have your own way of figuring out the destination that a node should move to. You might want a node to move in a loop and not just stop when it reaches its destination. Candy Dialog Engine cannot predict how you want your nodes to move. And in your game, you might even use different movement logic at different times. So, since you need to write code to make the command work, it's considered a bit of an advanced feature, and we're not going to talk too much about it in this video. That being said, if you know how to make nodes move in your game, and I'm not talking about in Candy Dialog Engine, I mean in general, if you know how to implement movement in a game in Godot, you should not find it very hard to write code for the command. Now, I'm just going to explain a few basic things here. You have your path1 data field and target nodes data field. You could use this for indicating to the command which nodes need to move. You have path2 and markers. You could use that to provide a destination or perhaps waypoints to follow. That's up to you. Again, you have to write the entire code, so these data fields, they don't really have a specific purpose. What I'm saying here is just some suggestions. You have an animation field. You could use it to tell the command which animation to play on the node when it's moving. So if it's a character, a human, an animal, you might want to play a walking animation. And then you have method and properties. You could use those two to indicate the pathfinding logic to use, or perhaps the speed of the movement. I don't know. Again, it's entirely up to you. And loops, yeah, you could use it also for whatever you want, but if the node that's moving is moving perhaps in a circle, you could use loops to indicate how many times it has to follow the path. Or it could also work if you have your node walking back and forth along the same path multiple times. And you've got your wait time and wait loops in case you want to pause the dialogue while the movement is happening. Remember when we talked about the media command, media commands also have these wait time and wait loops data fields. Now again, the move command does not have any logic for using wait time and wait loops. You're going to have to write that logic yourself. But, you know, that's an option. If you want dialogue to pause during movement, that's what those data fields could be used for. And you have a stop frame data field. You could use it, for example, to indicate which frame to pause on when the movement stops, or anything you want. Again, you have to write the entire code for the command, so what you do with those data fields is up to you. Now, just to show you the code and more precisely where to write it, you have to go to the Candy Engine script, and then you go here to the commands section and scroll down here to the cutscene commands. And in the cutscene commands, find the csmove command right here, and you can see there's no code for it. And you have this to-do command telling you to write your own code. So yeah, this is where you would write the code for the command. And when you update Candy Dialog Engine, make sure you keep a backup of your code somewhere, because candyengine.gd gets overwritten during updates. So you're going to have to copy and paste your custom code into the updated Candy Engine. And by the way, updates never happen automatically. You always have to manually update Candy Dialog Engine in your projects. So you won't have any issues there. And next we have the animation command. Now here you provide a path to your target nodes, and you can provide multiple nodes if you want to play an animation with the same name on multiple nodes at once. And now here you need to provide a path to the animation player that you want to use. And to do this, well, let me show you. I've given Alice an animation player here. And this animation player has an animation called hop, and it's causing Alice to hop whenever it plays. Now, what I need to do here is inside the script attached to Alice, I need to add a path to the animation player. And I do this in this dictionary here. This is the same dictionary I used previously to provide a path to Alice's speech bubble. So make sure you have this dictionary and it's named exactly like this, because Candy Dialog Engine is going to be looking for it. You can give your animation player key any name you want. I'm going to call mine AP1 for animation player 1. And then just fetch the node using its path like this. So yeah, that's all you need to do here inside the node's script. So here for path 2, I'm going to write the name of the key, AP1. And here in the animation data field, I write the name of the animation to play. Here, play animation asks me if I want to play the animation or simply freeze on the first frame. And since I want to play the animation, I'm gonna write 1. And here I have to select how many times I want the animation to play, and I just want the animation to play once. So I'm gonna write 1 in the loops field. And here you have the wait time and wait loops field. If you watched the section of this video previously on media commands, you should already be familiar with wait time and wait loops. And basically, wait time and wait loops tell the dialogue engine how long to pause the dialogue for while the animation is playing, if you want the dialogue to pause at all. If you don't want the dialogue to pause while the animation play, just leave those fields empty or write 0, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. So yeah, anyway, I only need to make dialogue pause for 1 loop, so I'm going to write 1. And now let's test this. Here we go. You can see Alice hopped when dialogue began. There we go again. So yeah, it worked. Now, something you need to know that I mentioned in passing, you can provide multiple targets to make them play an animation. However, you can only provide 1 path 2. So all the targets need to have the same path 2. And you can only provide 1 animation. So all these targets must have this animation and will be playing it. You cannot provide different animations for each target. Also, another thing I didn't mention, if I want the animation to play indefinitely, I could provide the value 0 for loops. And let's have a look at what happens. As you can see, Alice keeps hopping. The animation never stops. But, you know, that's fine. We can do something else here to stop the animation. We can just add the animation command. Now here you provide your path 1 and your target again, and then provide the path to the animation player once again. And here you have to provide the frame you want to stop on. And you have 2 options. When the animation stops, it can freeze on the first frame of the animation, or it can freeze on the last frame. Now, in the case of my hop animation, it doesn't matter because both frames look the same. And I'm going to use the first frame just because. Okay. So here's what's going to happen. The animation is going to play indefinitely. It's never going to stop. And dialogue is going to pause for 3 loops. So the animation will play 3 times before dialogue continues to the animation stop command. And when the animation stop command runs, it's going to stop the animation. So what should happen is we should see Alice hopping only 3 times. One, two, 3, and that's it. Alice stopped hopping. And finally, I'm going to show you the CS animation wait command. I'm going to insert it after the CS animation. And here, I'm going to remove the wait loops in the CS animation command, so the CS animation will no longer cause dialog to pause. And instead, the animation wait command is going to handle pausing dialog. Once again, we provide the path to our targets and our animation player, and you can see the animation wait command has the same wait time and wait loops fields as animation. So previously, in the animation command, wait loops had a value of 3, meaning that the animation played 3 times before dialog resumed. Now, animation will have no pausing, but CS animation wait is going to pause dialog for 3 loops. So let's test it to check that it works. One, two, three, and there we go. The CS animation wait command worked. And again, you can also specify an amount of time you want to pause dialog for. And keep in mind, wait time and wait loops are cumulative. So if I have 3 wait loops and a wait time of 0.25, the animation is going to play 3 times and an additional 0.25 seconds. So 0.25 is the middle of the animation when Alice is up in the air. So we should see the animation stop when Alice is in the middle of hopping. So let's test it. 1, 2, 3, and there we go. It stopped when Alice was in the air. But remember, it resets to the first frame, so that's why Alice doesn't remain floating in the air. She's back on the ground. I'm just going to play it again. Just watch closely how Alice teleports from the air to the ground. See this? Once more. There we go. So she hopped for 3 loops, and then the animation stopped in the middle of the 4th loop. Now, it's worth noting that if you use time to pause dialogue, it can be a little bit inaccurate due to performance. So, for example, if you do this, it might not exactly count 0.25 seconds. So you have another option, and you can provide a frame for wait time. And by default, my animation rate is 30 FPS, so that's 30 frames per second. My animation is half a second long, so that means it has 15 frames. So what might be more accurate would be to do this. Or let's say I want to play the animation for exactly 1 loop, but I want to use time only, not loops. So I would do f equal 15. And this is telling Candy Dialog Engine, pause dialog for 15 frames. Or if I do this, it means pause dialog for 1 loop plus an additional 15 frames. So yeah, let's just test it. And there we go. It played twice. And just in case you're wondering, you can use frames inside the CS animation command as well. Okay, that will work. So yeah, this is it. That's all about the CS animation commands. And finally, we're going to look at the CS Sprite commands. Now, the CS Sprite command is the command that you want to use when you have sprites. And it works with Sprite 2D, Animated Sprite 2D, Sprite 3D and animated Sprite 3D nodes. So, for example, if you're making a 2D game and your characters are represented by sprite nodes, you could use the CS Sprite command to modify the sprite images or animate the sprites. Now, here in my scene, I've added an object. And this object is a Sprite 3D called ball. And I'm going to use the CS Sprite command to make it display a sprite and play the sprite's animation. And it's very simple. First, I just need to provide a path to the object's parent, and then I provide the name of the object. Now, there's something you need to know, and that's where do you place the sprite images in your project files. And, well, it's very simple. You go to your Candy DE folder, the media folder, the characters folder, and then the sprites folder. And here you need to make a folder for any character or object that you plan to use the CS Sprite command on. So here my ball node has its own folder. And in this folder, again, you have two options. First, if you're using a Sprite 2D or Sprite 3D node, just place the sprite images here in the folder directly. However, if you're using animated Sprite 2D or animated Sprite 3D nodes, you need a Sprite Frames folder. And in that folder, you will place Sprite Frame resources that will be loaded into the animated Sprite nodes. And I will talk about this in more detail a little bit later. Now, for regular sprite images, you need to follow a specific naming convention. Now, if you're going to use sprite nodes, you should know this, but Godot needs to know how many horizontal and vertical frames the sprite has. And, well, let me show you here with my file. I have 5 vertical frames and 2 horizontal frames. Just imagine that this image is split into a grid with 5 columns and 2 rows, if that makes sense. And here, notice that the last frame on the last row is empty. So in total, my image has 9 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The last one doesn't count. It's not part of the animation. It's just empty. So what does it mean? Well, here is the naming convention. You can name your sprite images anything you want. For example, here I named it ball, but I could name it pink ball if I wanted to. That would be fine. What matters is the end of the name. It has to follow this convention here. First, you need to write an underscore, and then you have to write the number of columns. So in this case, there's 5 columns. Then you write X, and the X separates the number of columns from the number of rows. And then you write the number of rows. In this case, there are 2 rows. And finally, if the last row has empty frames, you need to write minus or dash and the number of empty frames. So in the present case, I have 1 empty frame. I would write -1. So this basically means 5 times 2 frames minus 1. And again, make sure that you write the columns first and the rows second. Now, if there's no empty frames in the last row, you could write -0, or you could just remove the number entirely. that would work. But again, in the case of this specific image, I have one empty frame, so I need to write -1. And this way, when Candy Dialog Engine loads this image and animates it, it knows exactly how many frames there are and how the frames are spread out across the entire image. It knows that there's 5 columns and 2 rows, so it can calculate how to split the image in multiple frames. Next, I need to provide the actual sprite node. Now, here my ball node is a sprite 3D, but my ball node could also be a different kind of node, and it could have a sprite 3D as a child for the purpose of displaying the sprite image. So here's what you do. Whatever node type this is, you attach a script to it. And it's somewhat similar to the scripts for characters. Remember, Alice has this script here with this dictionary, and for the CS command, we will need the same dictionary. So here I have the internal node dict once again. It's the same as Alice has here. And you just need to add a key here, and you can name that key anything you want. It doesn't matter. And here you need to indicate the sprite node, the actual sprite node. In my case, it's self. The node with this script is the sprite node itself. But if the sprite node was a child, I would do this. Okay, and I would replace this with the actual name of the node. So, here you would provide the path to the actual node. But again, in my specific case, I need to write self, because the node itself is the sprite node. Okay, so that's all you need to do. And now you can go back to your CS sprite command and provide the key to the sprite node. So my key is sprite. So here for path 2, I'm going to write sprite. And this is how Candy Dialog Engine knows on which node to display the sprite image. So very simple. And finally here, I can select the image that I want to display. And it shows here the sprites for ball. So ball is the ball folder that I had earlier. And you can even preview your sprites. Notice that it's actually showing an animated preview, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's the image I want to use. So I'm going to go with it. Now, one thing to note, you can provide multiple targets to the command. For example, I could provide Ball and Alice. And, well, Alice doesn't have images, so it's not showing anything for Alice. But if Alice had sprite images in her sprite folder, it would list them here. You would see Ball sprites, and you would also see Alice sprites. So you would be able to select anything you want. And you need to make sure, if you're using multiple targets, make sure that you separate the images by a comma, and make sure you list them in the correct order. So I would write something like this, perhaps. This is an imaginary image. It doesn't actually exist. We're just using it for the sake of example. So I would write this, and it would assign this image from the ball folder to ball, and it would assign this image from Alice's folder to Alice. And it's important to use the correct order, because if I write Alice's image first, if I do this, that would not work, because it would try to assign this image to Ball, and Ball doesn't have this image in its folder. And then it would try to assign the Ball image to Alice, but Alice doesn't have that image in her folder, so it would fail. So the order matters here if you're using multiple targets in the command. Okay, but we're just going to use one image for this example. Now here I can decide if I want the animation to play or if I want to freeze on the first frame. If I select true, the animation plays immediately, and if I select false, the animation doesn't play, it pauses on the first frame. I want to play the animation, so I'm going to set it to true. And next you have the loops. Data field. So here you just need to tell the command how many times to play the animation. So you can write 1, you can write 3, or if you want to play the animation indefinitely, write 0. And that's what I'm going to do. I don't want the animation to stop, I want the animation to keep repeating forever. So I'm going to write 0. And finally here we have our wait time and wait loops again. So you can specify how many times you want the animation to play before dialogue resumes. So I'm going to play the animation 5 times. Dialogue is going to pause and the animation will play 5 times, and then dialogue is going to resume. And to make sure that we see dialogue resuming, we're going to have Alice say test. So test won't appear immediately, it will appear after the animation has played 5 times. Okay, let's try it. And there you go. You can see the ball bouncing, and after it bounced 5 times, the text finally appeared. Let's just watch it again. And there you go. The text does not appear immediately. And now I'm not going to show you wait time, because I already showed it to you earlier with the CS animation command, so you should understand how wait time works. And I'm going to show you the sprite wait command. And here it's similar to the CS animation wait command. You provide a path1, provide a target, and provide the sprite node inside the target. Remember, that's the dictionary key. It's not the name of the actual node. And here you have to indicate how long you want the dialogue to pause. And I'm going to pause my dialogue for 5 loops once again. So now CS Sprite will no longer pause dialogue. Sprite wait is going to handle dialogue pausing at the start. So let's go. It's going to be the same thing as before, it's just that the pause is handled by a different command now. But you can see the ball bounces 5 times and then the text appears, because dialogue unpaused after 5 loops. Okay, very, very simple. And now let's add the sprite stop command. And once again, path 1, target node, and path 2. And here you can select if you want to stop on the first frame or on the last frame. In my case, it doesn't matter because the first and last frame are identical, but I'm going to select first frame by default. Okay. And this command now is going to stop the animation after Alice has spoken. So let's see it in action. The ball is bouncing, Alice speaks, and when I press dialog continue, the animation will stop. There we go. The animation stopped. But notice, the sprite is still visible. It didn't become invisible. And this is normal. This is because the sprite is part of your game world. It's not part of the dialogue. It's being controlled through dialogue commands, but it's a part of the game world and not the dialogue itself. So the sprite stop command has no business removing the sprite. Okay, the sprite stop command can only stop the animation. This is its only job. And well, if you want to if you want to hide the sprite, if you want to make it disappear, you're gonna have to find a different way of doing it. One option, you can simply use the sprite command again, like this, and this time don't provide a sprite file. And let's see what happens. Okay, it's animating, and now when I press dialog advance, the animation stops and the sprite disappears. And one last thing I want to mention is you can actually provide multiple targets for the CSprite command. For example, if I had another object like this, machine, I could provide multiple targets. However, you can only provide one file. So this is very important. You can't provide multiple files. All targets must be assigned the same file. And well, to be exact, the files can be different. However, they must have the same names. So here, Candy Dialog Engine is going to look in the ball folder and assign a file named like this. And then it's going to look into the machine folder and assign a file also named like this. Now, if these are two different files with different images, that's fine, as long as the names are the same. In the future, we might provide an option to provide multiple files, but at this time, this is not possible. You have to provide the same file to every target. And one more thing, I mentioned that you can use animated sprite nodes, and let me just show you how to do this. Let's say I have this animated sprite 3D node. Animated sprite 3D nodes use a sprite frames resource. So you need to create a sprite frames resource and you need to save it inside the sprite frames folder. This is what this folder is for. And I'm not going to show you here because I don't have a sprite frames resource. But then in the Candy Dialog Creator, here, as the sprite file, you would provide a sprite frame resource. And there you go. And then here, you would write the animation you want to play. A sprite frame resource, if you don't know that, can feature multiple animations, and each animation has a different name. So you would provide the name of the animation that needs to be played. So that's how you use the CS Sprite command with sprite frame resources.